All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Oh, my gosh. Thank you very much. Please, folks, please, we have limited time. Please be seated. Oh, my... I am overwhelmed by my Thursday recorded audience. You are really quite special, and today is a special day, as you know. Just past 80,000 subscribers on the channel, on our little channel. It started as a homegrown effort, and it really is still a homegrown effort. So thank you, everybody who has shared the show, who subscribed to the show, and is part of the show. All of you who participate in different ways. You email, you jump on the chat, you leave comments. It's really terrific. So thank you all. And Kim, thank you. You are a big part of this show, and you've grown into this super good role as an off-air producer. You know, so you see Kim in one way, but she is working hard behind the scenes, too. And I will, however, because, we are who we are, I will have to extract an apology from Kim today, and you'll learn about that in a moment. David Katz is here, even as they book handsome Luigi into New York prison. We'll get to that. And in fact, the gaggle or Google or bundle of people around that handsome, cold-blooded killer Luigi, it was exciting as they landed in a helicopter there in New York. We'll share that video with you, and you'll get to see everybody as they try to kind of edge in for some FaceTime, maybe, as they take the big perp walk off of the helicopter pad. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to miss whatever was on screen. It was probably something significant. There were, I believe, Jane O says, good morning. Happy non-denominational holiday and good health to all. And thank you, Mark and Kim and Albert and Tony and luminaries. And happy birthday to all the December birthdays, folk. Me too. Jane O, thank you for the 1999 super chat. I also am a December baby. So happy birthday to you. Happy non-denominational holiday. You can get these shirts at our merch store, which is getmarkmerch.com. They have them in the red, the green, if you like kind of a faint feel of Christmas. The red and green colors. We have the blue colors. We also have the olive. I like that. There's the green. Different shades of green, different shades of blue. There's a lot more in the way of shading with this news site than there have been in the past. Anyway, that's the Happy Non-Denominational Holidays t-shirt. And I am wearing it now. You could be wearing it soon. Speaking of merch, we have kind of, and thanks again, Jane O. My birthday, again, is, Jane, it's also December. And it's a sucky time to have a birthday, to be perfectly honest about it. I mean, it's a great time of year, but people are just focused on, frankly, a bigger holiday than our birthdays. My birthday is the day after Christmas. I can't even get people to show up for a dinner. And people are away. I'm sorry, Mark, we would, but we're in Aspen. We're in Turks and Caicos, or whatever it is.
We're with nothing.
Thank you. That's what I feel. That explains my sickened psychology. Yeah,
animosity?
Yeah, it explains why I'm constantly irritated.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Years of that. So the day after Christmas, and one day sooner, I could have been the savior. But
could have been.
Yeah, coulda, woulda. Come on, dude. Pamela says, sadly, can't make the 21st evening holiday gathering. I did wear my happy non-denominational shirt to fitness class today. I love that.
Nice. Mm-hmm.
Well, we'll miss you, Pamela. It is going to be quite an event. It is Saturday, and we are pretty much sold out. So thank you for having considered it. We'll do another one, before long. This one we did because you guys requested it. I wonder if Donald Trump would criminally pursue weather reporters for giving an inaccurate forecast, asked Jim Slayton, just like he attacked Ann Seltzer for her polling results. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. The degree to which Donald Trump is going after people is extraordinary, and it is generally baseless, of course, as you've just sort of noted, going against journalists, going against media outlets, and then, of course, going against this pollster who's a Republican pollster. I mean, you know, always has been pretty accurate on Iowa politics, and going after the paper that published her poll. And of course, the reality is that there was never a better time, and I mean that almost in an evil way, for Donald Trump. I mean, it's a better time. There's never a better time for Donald Trump to go after these media organizations than now, because these media organizations are no longer robust media organizations with a lot of money to defend lawsuits. Literally, the Des Moines Register, who I think is, you know, named and targeted in one of his suits with this Seltzer poll, for publishing the Seltzer poll, they're hanging by a thread. So you're looking at a newsroom that's already been gutted, and you're looking at a media landscape that has diminished so substantially from what it was, let's say, even in the 90s. So the threat of any kind of legal confrontation with Donald Trump is enough to make a lot of these media organizations just tap out ahead of time. So we'll have to see what's going to happen with the Des Moines Register, but they just don't have the money to defend a lawsuit. I mean, admittedly, it's a frivolous lawsuit. It will not prevail. That is to say, Trump's efforts will not prevail. But that doesn't matter, because you saw what happened in the case of ABC. They tapped out. It was a quick $15 million check. It's like, so what? Make it go away. I don't want a big ugly thing where they're reading George Stephanopoulos' texts and emails. And, you know, there could be sort of reputational damage if you were to allow that trial to continue, not to mention the fact that they're a big organization way beyond ABC, and they didn't want to get on adversarial footing with the new president because he is so clearly vengeful. I mean, this is a remarkable thing that the incoming president has sort of made a priority, going after all of these people, from Liz Cheney to Adam Schiff to the Des Moines Register to ABC News. He fires warning shots at MSNBC. So we can look at it and see the absurdity of it, like the absurdity, as I just mentioned, in the Des Moines Register case. Why? They published a poll and you're going to go after them? I mean, it's, you know. So it's a baseless case legally. But, and we'll talk to David Katz about this, but my point is, it doesn't matter whether there's a basis or not, whether there's evidence or not, because the reality is they don't want to get into a back and forth with Donald Trump, and they don't want to get into a courtroom situation with deep pockets on one side, and the Des Moines Register doesn't have any money virtually anymore. So Elon may need to be shut down himself by Doge. I'll get to Elon in a minute, because he clearly is the co-president. Or maybe Trump is the co-president. I can't figure out which one's Batman and which one is Robin, but they are definitely Batman and Robin. Maybe they alternate. But thank you, Spencer. Yeah, Elon may need to be shut down. This is a serious situation with the government continuing. But before I get to that, Albert, didn't I have some... I had some business to do. Let me just...
The Mark Thompson Show.
I wanted to quickly clear up something, and I also got an email. Like, this is the very... shall we first do the...
Happy Chanukah.
Oh, yeah.
I have no
Thank you.
idea what Chanukah is.
Oh, right.
But happy Chanukah.
Yeah, happy Chanukah,
because
everybody.
they said so.
Yeah. That is Smokey Robinson, and he did that cameo, wishing everybody a happy Chanukah. I think he did it. Must have done it last year, because I remember seeing it last year, too. But, by the way, how old is Smokey Robinson? Anybody? Anybody know how old Smokey Robinson is? The Hall of Fame lead singer of, what was it, The Miracles? Smokey Robinson and the Miracles? Anybody? Take a guess at how old Smokey Robinson is now? I mean...
Happy Chanukah.
Happy Chanukah.
I have no idea what Chanukah is.
What do you... Anybody? On a... the answer is he's 84 is the answer we're looking for. Yeah. But I got a note about Chanukah, and I'll find it for you quickly. And the note was about the pronunciation, and I guess there are a lot of different spellings of Hanukkah. but there really is only one. This is from Scott. I heard your commentary on the pronunciation of Hanukkah today. I was raised Jewish, and there are many ways to spell it, and no one agrees on how to spell it. In Hebrew, there is a letter for the ch sound that sounds close to what you hear when someone is clearing your throat. It doesn't translate directly into English, thus the controversy.
Happy Chanukah.
Yeah. Anyway, this is a favorite song of mine, he says, and then he shares it as a link to it, but I can't play it because it's, but it does get into the spelling of Hanukkah. But he says, it sounds like it's Hanukkah is the way you should say it, right? If you see the CH, Hanukkah. No?
Happy Chanukah.
Okay, or that would work too. Yeah. Now, Hanukkah, or Chanukah, they all fall on Christmas night, according to Rabbi Rothman. Isn't that what he said yesterday, Kim?
I think so. I'm afraid to answer any question now for fear of getting it wrong. But I think that Hanukkah and Christmas coincide this year.
Well, I certainly hope that that's
Happy Chanukah.
I hope that that's right. Otherwise, you will be.
I hope so too.
Yeah. Kim is referring.
Say nothing. You get nothing. You say nothing.
I'm
on this show.
You I don't know what.
They pay me a lot of money for having attitude.
Right. You might. Look.
Happy Chanukah.
All right. Let's move on. But I'm glad. Thank you, Scott, for sending that note about
the Mark Thompson Show,
about Chanukah and Hanukkah. And I did want to, and what Kim is sort of hinting at, is I did want to address something that happened on this show yesterday. I was doing a story about the two astronauts who are in space now for much longer than they had originally planned. It was to have been a 7 to 10 day mission, and now they're stuck up there until late March or early April. Isn't that right? So we did the story yesterday, and as I was doing it, I identified the two astronauts, Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams. Williams there on the left. Well, when I identified Sonny Williams, because her name is S-U-N-I, I faltered. I wondered, is that the right pronunciation? And Kim swept in, as she does.
Trying to help out,
and, fundamentally always correcting me if she can, And she said, it's Sunni, okay? It's Sunni.
Well, her name is Sunita, or Sunita. Now we know S-U-N-I-T-A, which you would think is Sunita. Right?
I actually do not blame you for believing that her name would be pronounced Sunni for the reasons that you've just detailed. Yeah. However, your news chops are usually better than this. You just went with Sunni based on the Sunnita, not really having checked out how she says her name, Kim.
Sure.
Right. I mean,
I blame you.
All right, maybe it's my fault, but I am telling you that I went on the radio in Los Angeles yesterday, all right, and with this same story, and I called her Sunni Williams, fresh with the information that Kim McAllister had given me. And I'm instantly corrected by the news guy on KFI, Michael Crozier.
Why are you yelling?
And he says, it's Sunny. And I said, I don't think so, dude. I don't think so, because we just had this on my show, and Kim McAllister told me that it's Sunni, okay? So maybe you should look at the way you've been saying it, Michael. So he then played for me Sunny introducing herself as Sunny. And that pretty much settled the score.
Yeah.
Left me humiliated. And I'm thinking, now it's time for some kind of apology.
Now it's time to pass that humiliation onward.
Albert, do you think what apology should Kim go for?
I'm going to offer you a my bad, I'm sorry.
No, and my bad, I'm sorry is not good.
My bad, I'm sorry.
That is absolutely not sufficient.
That's what you're getting. A my bad, I'm sorry.
I humiliated myself on LA radio, drive time radio, big show, and across America on iHeartRadio, and you.
How about this? How about I apologize to the KFI community?
Before the apology, I do have evidence if we want to review the tapes.
Oh, evidence of from
yesterday's show, yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, all right. I mean, do we need further evidence? Sure, go ahead. So there's a lot going on here. But Butch and Sunny, or is that how she says her name, or Suni?
I would say Suni,
Yeah. They are.
So you asked me, so I had to come up with something.
No, you could say Sunny. You could come up with the right answer. You had to come up with something. I had to come up with a correction.
Is that how she pronounces her name? I don't know.
Because that's what I do.
Suni to me.
I correct things.
Kim, how are you?
All right. Anyway, I don't think my bad, I'm sorry is sufficient. I think you should go full Tubin on this because of the fact that I took your information, went on LA radio, and called her Suni.
Uh-oh.
And so I would have gone with...
It was wrong, it was stupid, and I'm trying to be a better person.
But you can't say that,
That's
apparently.
a little severe. That's a little severe.
No, you're right. It is, but it was quite a violation, Kim. It was quite a... Anyway, all right.
Kim, how are you?
Anyway, at least people are paying attention to you, Mark. Yeah, thank you, Nullifidian. Full Tubin says, see, Jason, absolutely. It's a full Tubin situation. This is absolutely... easy. I mean, this is if ever a situation demanded a full Tubin, it's this one, but I'm not going to get it. Quit picking on Kim. Oh my, see, this is what always happens. You F me over, and then people come to your...
That's a little severe as well.
People come up. Kim just doing her job. Mark needs correcting. How dare you, commentator?
Do you know who I am?
I am really...
I'm kind of a big deal.
My own audience turning on me like this is outrageous. I'm not comfortable with it. I'm moving on, Albert. I'm moving on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right. I want to get to first Luigi landing in New York. Much fanfare with his arrival in New York, as you know, extradited from Pennsylvania, where he was apprehended. Luigi Mangione, the suspect in the killing of the United Healthcare CEO, Brian Thompson. He'll appear in federal court this afternoon. He faces 4 federal counts in connection with the death. And Mangione formally waived extradition, was flown from Pennsylvania to New York. Here he is arriving by helicopter, and they have him in the orange jumpsuit. If you're listening, I'll just describe it. There are, I would say, 1, 2, 3, maybe a half dozen to 10 officers with helmets and firearms surrounding him. There's an NYPD photographer who's taking pictures, and there is a gaggle of people who are walking with him to the vehicle that'll take him from this helicopter pad to the courthouse in New York. And he's had his charges upgraded, right, Kim? So now they've added this terrorism charge so that it becomes first-degree murder instead of the second-degree murder that it had been.
Right.
So there is now, I think, things play out on some level in a predictable way. That is to say, they'll be booking later. But, you know, among the people who are there, you can just see him in the background, Mayor Eric Adams, screen left. If you look all the way to the left, there's a guy with a scarf. He's behind the officer with a weapon. Now he's just clipped out of that shot. But he's New York City Mayor Eric Adams, and he is there and was getting some, as you know, he's been indicted. And he was getting some grief about being there at Luigi's arrival. And he said he was hoping to present an image of leadership when he joined law enforcement, escorting Luigi Mangione from the helicopter that carried him to New York.
It just seemed like he really wanted his picture taken.
Yeah, I agree with Kim. It seems as though, you know, that was a photo op type thing.
Yeah.
We wanted to personally be here to show the symbolism of leading from the front, Adams said. He acknowledged some people who have appeared to cheer on Mangione's alleged allegations, saying their support is, quote, vile and, quote, sends the wrong message as gun violence is being used to terrorize American communities. You're celebrating using violence to solve an issue.
Yeah, look at all those people.
Yeah, it's pretty extraordinary. There's a great picture. Thank you, Albert. That is Mangione being taken into custody. That's a wild picture for a lot of reasons. What a perfect picture.
I think that's the mayor right to the left of Mangione. You can kind of see him. Yeah, right in between those two. Yeah, there you go.
Right over Mangione's.
Make sure you get your picture in there.
Over Mangione's right shoulder as we look at him, his left shoulder as we look at him. Yeah, exactly. That's him. So, well, we've been over and over this, but there's still many who don't believe that Luigi actually pulled the trigger. There's also a cult of support around Luigi. He has the funding apparatus in place to help him with his defense. We've told you before, the attorney that is defending him has been on this show before. And there are some defense options. I mean, an acquittal doesn't seem like it's in the offing, but nonetheless, this situation will be prosecuted legally in ways that maybe still offer some wiggle room to defense. And we'll talk to David Katz about that in hour 2. But Luigi Mangione booked in today. So thank you, Albert. Good update. Very good.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Other thing happening is that there is something of a chaotic threat. I mean, a chaotic reality to what's happening in Washington. And Donald Trump and Elon Musk are not even president yet. I can't figure out which one of those guys is the top dog, but both dogs are barking, and they don't want a deal on the budget. And the government shutdown is real. What's that?
Who paid more for the presidency?
Yeah.
Trump or Musk? I think maybe Musk paid more.
Musk did pay more.
Yeah,
certainly
dog.
Personally, Musk paid more, for sure. Yeah. So, Albert, let's get a state of the state. Here's a setup package to give you an idea of what's happening.
To Capitol Hill, where lawmakers are racing to avert a government shutdown after President-elect Trump and Elon Musk opposed a bipartisan deal to keep the government running. Let's go back to our chief White House correspondent, Mary Bruce. Good morning again, Mary.
Good morning again, Robin. Well, there is a lot of uncertainty up on the Hill right now. The House was set to vote on a bill to keep the government up and running, but then Elon Musk got involved, launching a frantic last-minute pressure campaign against the bill, arguing that it was bloated with wasteful spending. And then Donald Trump got involved, followed suit, torpedoing the bipartisan bill, urging Republicans to get smart and tough without telling them exactly what he wants them to do here next. So where do things stand here now? Well, with the holiday just around the corner, paychecks for millions of federal workers are now hanging in the balance, including some service members and critical workers like TSA agents. And Congress is now scrambling for a plan B. Now, one option, the speaker could try to strip away all of that additional spending and pass a bill just to fund the government. But that option is also in doubt this morning. It's not clear if that is going to get enough support. One thing we do know, the clock is ticking, that deadline looming tomorrow night. Michael.
Yeah, the clock is ticking. I mean, this is a pretty big deal, and this deal was made. And what has happened is that, again, at the 11th hour, Musk began to sow the seeds of anger about the deal, that there were too many giveaways to the Democrats within this deal. So he started screaming about the budget package being unfair. He doesn't want it passed. And then, as noted, hours later, Trump jumped on board. And so when you had Trump and Musk both barking together, they were able to cow leadership. They also, it's a real humiliation for Mike Johnson, the guy who really championed this bipartisan bill. And, you know, there's $100 billion in disaster aid. There's a farm bill extension. There's a bunch of stuff that really shouldn't be contentious. And it's contentious because it's the Democrats who have put these things on. But the naivete is just the word I'll use when it comes to Elon Musk is the thing that I'm struck by, because this is the way you pass bills in Washington. You have to attach things to them that the other party, the party that you don't like, will give you a thumbs up on, and then you'll have the votes sufficient for passage. The idea somehow that you can just kick and scream and dig your heels in, we'll see how that gets road tested, because clearly that's what they're going to be doing. But it is not, in general, an effective way to forge legislation. You don't have Congress yet. And this is the thing that Elon Musk, I think, has lost sight of. You won the election, yes, but your guys don't get there till the new year, if you want to think of it that way. So right now, you still need the Democrats to vote in favor of this bill. But I don't know what's going to happen. And again, the stripped-down bill, that's really not the way you'll likely see the government remain open. And the raising of the debt limit, I mean, this is a crazy thing that they have asked for. They want the debt limit raised before Trump comes in, and then we'll need the debt limit raised, of course, because of what? Because of the tax cuts. So you can't pass these tax cuts that are going to wildly bloat the debt without the debt limit being raised. And so he wants the Democrats to help them raise the debt limit so that Trump doesn't have to do it, essentially, because Trump will need that.
We had another month until this craziness started.
Yeah.
Come on.
It's
I was reading that Mike Johnson tried to tell Musk and Ramaswamy last night or the night before, listen, we have a deal in place. This is how it works. And they went running to Trump and said, make it stop. And now we have chaos. And they could, because they did this, full on shut down the government before they even take the seats in the White House.
That's exactly right. And I know that they're coming off of what they feel was successful with the border bill. Remember, the bipartisan border bill was going to be passed. And again, the involvement of Trump at the last moment derailed that bill. He felt that that bill, if passed, would actually address the issue at the border in such a way that it looked like Joe Biden was doing something at the border, and that would be bad politically for Republicans, for trying to win the office. We're making a case that Trump would say they're not doing anything at the border, and if you pass this bill, then we can't say that they're not doing anything at the border anymore. So he was successful in getting that bill derailed. I think these guys lose track, really, of some of the specifics on these bills, so they're trying the same dance again, and it worked. Except this bill is different. This bill to keep the government open has a lot more at stake in the short term. So this is a remarkably difficult situation, fraught with all sorts of danger as far as government goes, in the same ways that Kim has sort of just alluded to, the TSA, National Park Service. There are a lot of aspects of the federal government that we interact with all the time that we don't really think about. And over the Christmas season, to have the government shut down, it's a pretty big risk. Yeah. We'll see how it figures out ultimately and what deal might be made today. But it is political chaos, and it's people who don't know what they don't know. So Elon Musk comes in. He doesn't understand Washington. He doesn't even understand who controls what in the congressional machine that you will need to pass this bill. And yet he makes all of these demands. Trump is king of chaos, says Gordon. It's true. On some level, Trump revels in chaos. But this kind of chaos, I mean, we'll have to see. But I think there's a lot of stink associated with it. Brian says, remind me again, exactly how many votes did Elon Musk earn this past election? Well, here's the reality too, Brian, that people who voted for Trump must have known that Elon Musk was going to be a big part of things. He was a big part of the campaign, maybe the biggest part of the campaign. And he was identified early by Trump, before Trump won, saying, I'm going to appoint Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy to this newly created Department of Government Efficiency, which was sort of a wink and a nod, Doge, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that people who voted for Trump must have known that these guys were going to have a pretty big place at the table. They don't care about running the government. They're going to orchestrate a default in the future. The dollar is toast if they succeed, says James. This is part of a bigger conversation that I'd like to have, and you're not wrong, of course. You can only damage the dollar so much before it begins to really be, and America's credit so much before it begins to be a real problem. Musk is also trying to buy Nigel Farage in Britain. Yeah, I think actually, I was reading something the other day about Farage counseling a more moderate approach on the part of Trump, and it's sort of weird because Farage is such a, he's a firebrand. SP, as he says, it's going to be a long 4 years.
And it hasn't even started yet. Come on.
Mark, you're being naive. I love this. Teacher, I love being reprimanded by Teacher Lori. Mark, you are being naive. Yeah, I mean, I didn't, it's possible. It's possible. This is purposeful to do it at the end of Biden's term and blame him. Trump will, quote, solve after his inauguration. They know what they're doing. Well,
Good day, sir.
The you may be right about that, but I think that there is considerable stink that comes from shutting down the government when you're clearly the reason that it's being shut down. So you may be right. I mean, that this is their plan. I mean, clearly it is their plan. I mean, I don't think that I'm not suggesting it's not their plan, but the idea somehow, and Lori's not wrong about something else, that Musk has said he wants nothing passed. He wants nothing done until Trump is sworn in. He's literally said that. So I think you're not wrong. They want nothing done for this administration. And so maybe as far as they're concerned, it's a win to shut the government down. What I'm saying is that there's a lot of stink that is going to come off of shutting the government down. So Robert says the freak show has begun. Yeah, it's a scary time. It really is. It's a scary time because I think you have total rookies and novices in positions of amazing power. Within Trump's cabinet, you have total rookies and novices doing things that they're ill-equipped to do. Pete Hegseth is a classic example, a guy who looks good on the weekend Fox and Friends morning show, and he, with no experience, except small experience running a, quote, nonprofit, that he was so poor at running that they threw him out of running it. You have that guy who is positioned to run the Pentagon. It is absurd. I'm leaving out the sexual assault. I'm leaving out the drunkenness. I'm leaving out showing up to work plowed. I'm leaving it out. I'm just talking about his basic novice quality. And that's what I think you're seeing in Musk and Ramaswamy. It's the, we just got here, but we're going to start to mess with everything, even though we don't know what everything is or how it works. Luis, douches for Doge. Thanks, America, says Luis. Yeah. Ain't it true? So, again, I think there are no surprises here from the standpoint of loyalists to Trump falling in line. But I worry about this. I mean, I worry, certainly worry about the government being shut down, but I'm saying if I were they, I would worry about this, because I think this might be a little too much chaos. But Teacher Lori could be right. I mean, maybe it will redound to their benefit. I don't know. Jennifer T. says, happy holidays, Mark, Kim, Albert, and Tony. Thanks for making my mornings. I love that.
Morning.
Yeah. Must be a West Coaster. We're on in the afternoon on the East Coast, morning on the West Coast.
Morning.
Yeah. Regarding Luigi, Noe Marie says there is a non-matching eyebrow defense. The masked down photos have a less full brow. That is one of the conspiracy theories that has run through the Luigi case.
We got the wrong guy? Is that what they think?
I've heard that this guy was set up like he was going to be the patsy, sort of. I don't see how this holds water because he had the gun, he had the silencer, he had the jacket.
He had the manifesto, didn't he?
Yeah, I had the manifesto. Thank you. Yeah. Well, here it is. This is the comparison on eyebrows. Now, what is she saying? She's saying that Albert. What is she saying? Or Kim? What is Noe Marie saying on the Luigi's eyebrows? That they don't match up. They all look pretty
non-matching. They're less full.
Yeah.
Than the guy in the photo.
That's interesting. You're right. Like the eyebrows kind of come together in one of the pictures, don't they? Huh.
That could just be eyebrow management, you know.
It could also be when the pictures were taken. Yeah, you're right. Like it's dovetailing with eyebrow management.
Right.
But it just seems as though there were enough other things, pieces of evidence that were sticking to Luigi that it's hard for me to figure how he was just a patsy. But it does represent something that is still out there. So he tweezed. Perhaps he plucked them, Jim Shields said. Oh, please, he's guilty as sin, says Michael. He does seem pretty guilty. I mean, I understand how he has achieved a kind of folk hero status because he's taken on the big bad wolf is sort of the thinking. I mean, I think you can't condone it. You really just can't. But I understand why. I mean, that you can argue, and I think you can make this argument cogently, that CEO and that organization led to the deaths of many more people than one guy on the street of Manhattan. That they refused coverage that essentially created situations by which people would lose their lives because they couldn't get life-saving procedures or medications. So I get how you get there. There is the disparity that they're noting in the eyebrows. If you want to subscribe to that theory, there is the photo that will help you do it. Will there be a Luigi movie?
Well,
Michael is asking.
Many Luigi movies.
Well, there's already one Luigi movie, and that is from Alex Gibney. Does everybody know who Alex Gibney is? He's one of the great documentary filmmakers, and he did, you Google him, and you'll see he did everything from, what was the movie that, The Smartest Men in the Room, the Enron movie? He did that. He did
Google it.
He did Going Clear, the Scientology movie. He did an incredible film called Restrepo, which was about being in Afghanistan at a forward outpost in Afghanistan. The outpost was called Restrepo. It was named after a medic who lost his life in Afghanistan. And Gibney does something so well. He lets you feel. I really recommend this movie, Restrepo. I mean, all the movies from Gibney. Anything from Gibney is terrific. There it is, anonymous content and Alex Gibney developing documentary on Luigi. So this is the first thing that will come down. But just to finish my thought, the thing about Restrepo is Gibney takes you inside this forward unit there in Afghanistan, this outpost. And you see the long periods when nothing happens and guys are just kind of, they're playing video games, they're passing the time, they're playing music, and then something will suddenly happen. There's a mix of boredom and tension, and it's really effectively done. And it's true cinema verite, meaning, you turn on the camera and you just see what happens. I really recommend it. It's called Restrepo. That's Alex Gibney, but he does great stuff. So he's kind of a Ken Burns kind of guy. Like everything that he does is going to be some version of great. So anyway, that is the movie that will be done. If the tweezers don't pluck, you must. The case is out of luck, says Rick. All right. Way too many photos of this guy. What executive meeting is that early in the morning? Says Cajun Fish and Hound. What does that mean? So Cajun Fish and Hound is saying it was a setup of some kind or what?
Maybe in regards to the perp walk of Mangione this morning?
Oh,
I don't know. Maybe not.
What executive meeting is this early in the morning? Is that early in the morning? Doesn't that mean he's referring to the executive meeting that Thompson was going to be attending? Isn't that right?
I don't know.
No, anyway. Please get back to us, Cajun Fish and Hound. You have us fully intrigued. We don't know. This is not about Luigi in as much as it's about the public's outrage at the healthcare industry, says Peter. I mean, I think that that's true. I think if he had taken down somebody else in New York City, some rando, some rich guy, it wouldn't matter. It's because this particular rich guy ran this immense healthcare organization that was committed to rejecting more coverage for bills submitted than any other healthcare provider. So, I mean, armed with that knowledge, it all of a sudden became, a holy battle. But I think the comment was asking what meeting was the UHC CEO going to that early in the morning. It was a shareholders meeting. It was wasn't it? It was a...
Yeah, there was something about, it was a finance meeting, I think, of some type.
I thought it was an investors meeting. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Here it is. The meeting was an investors meeting. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. So, and by the way, not for nothing, your CEO is just gunned down in the street in front of the hotel in which you're having a meeting. And you still go on with the meeting? That's amazing to me.
It's really important.
Anyway. Yeah, this is interesting. Peter says, it's amazing how much Luigi is getting attention for offing a CEO of UHC versus law enforcement caring about Sandy Hook or Uvalde. And there were little children that were murdered, nothing done. Well, I said it at the time after Sandy Hook. I said, if we can't get any kind of legislation and moderation of the gun laws in this country after this, it will never happen. And it hasn't. And it won't. There is baked into America a fetishized relationship with firearms. That's just a fact. I mean, you can't tell me after Sandy Hook that you shouldn't have done something. So I agree. And also, Spencer says Luigi is hot. Well,
the Mark Thompson Show.
That is true. I can't argue with that. I can't argue with that. So we've covered some government shutdown chaos. We covered the Luigi perp walk as he's landed in New York with a lot of fanfare. And I think I'm trying to see if I can get a Kim newscast in here before we get David Katz on. But before her newscast, I do want to mention one thing, which is that Amazon really may be striking in certain strategic places, and California is one of them.
I think they're on the picket lines today, right?
Yeah. Today was supposed to be the target day. I mean, this is a key time, obviously, for packages to be delivered and sorted. And that's, to be fair to these workers, that is a good time to strike. I mean, they need you, and you have to communicate and demonstrate how much they need you. And so this is a good time to strike. I mean, it's a horribly inconvenient time, but it's a good time to strike. So they won't negotiate over a contract, Amazon. So union officials are hitting the picket lines, and there are actions outside Amazon facilities around the U.S. Staten Island is a big one. They had a big labor dispute in Staten Island. The Teamsters in Portland also announcing a picket at the Amazon warehouse today and tomorrow. And 4 facilities in Southern California. Also Skokie, Illinois, and Atlanta. So enough of a strike to perhaps really make the ripple effect something that we feel. But the spokespeople for Amazon say the truth is that the Teamsters have actively threatened, intimidated, and attempted to coerce Amazon employees and third-party drivers to join them. That's illegal and is the subject of multiple pending unfair labor practice charges against the union. The union says The corporate elitists who run Amazon are leaving workers with no choice. Greedy executives are pushing thousands of hardworking Americans to the brink. Amazon rakes in more money than anybody, he says. This is Sean O'Brien, who's the Teamsters general president. Amazon rakes in more money than anybody. They subject workers to injury and abuse at every turn. And they illegally claim not to be the rightful employer of nearly half their workforce. This rigged system cannot continue. Amazon must be held accountable to workers and consumers alike, he says. Of course, that's a reference in part to some of these workers just being seasonal workers, so they're not really employees, and Amazon finds ways around having to pay benefits for a lot of these workers. And they've also stood in the way, it would seem, over the last few years of collective bargaining, which is exactly what these people want. So the picket signs go up, and those who are working inside stay outside. And that's the situation today at a number of Amazon facilities and sorting centers across America. So good luck to all. We certainly hope that I hope the dust settles and that the workers get what they want. I think it's very hard work. It really is. That the Amazon facility insiders guides that we've read, there was a big thing in the New York Times. I remember reading about the day of an Amazon worker and an Amazon employee and the demands that are made. And, when you do the sorting and you do all the stuff that you have to do and you make your time, they then make your time even shorter. You know what I mean? The more you hit your goals, the more they make your goals harder to hit. So I see that in sales as well. You oftentimes see somebody who's a really good salesperson do extremely well, and then the company completely changes the rules in year two. In the following year, it'll be, all right, great, glad that you made those. Now, here's a different territory, and you have higher goals to meet. So, unions protect the guy who isn't doing the job, says iCerial. And you know what? Sometimes that's true. But these Republicans are always throwing a monkey wrench into everything, says Carol. Trump wants to raise the debt ceiling on Biden's watch, not his. If Trump wants the debt ceiling raised, let him do it on his watch. Yeah, I'm with you on that completely. All right. Smash the like button. Please subscribe to the show. Glad you're here. Smash it like a
with your
boss.
iron rod.
Yeah. Give us a thumbs up. It's great to have everybody here, and we will continue. David Katz, the brilliant legal analyst, one of the great legal analysts in the English-speaking world. He will join us just after the top of the next hour. I'll mention the Happy Non-Denominational Holidays shirts are flying off of the shelves, and all of our little Mark Thompson Show elves are packing them into little pouches that will be sent to you. GetMarkMerch.com. And I'm also... I'm drinking from thank you, Albert. Happy Non-Denominational T-shirts. And, they're discounted for the holidays. So grab that, and also the mugs. You can get any of these things on a mug. The Chit 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 mug is a big hit with the kids. They love Chit Chit Chit. I'm drinking out of a Chit 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 mug right now. And they just arrived at the house. There's never been anything like this mug just arrived here. I don't know if you can.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, there it is. Right. Yeah. So you can get one of those. And there is, I think, also, Albert, there's something else. So we could try ignoring it, sir, isn't there? That's one of the...
How would you handle this?
Yeah.
We could try ignoring it, sir.
That is on a mug. We could try ignoring it, sir. And you can have that as well for $21, reduced from $26.
I like the tall mug.
Yeah, the tall, that's a tall drinking glass. You can get We Could Try Ignoring It, sir, on that drinking glass as well. I like Chit Chit Chit, says Jam. Yeah, Chit 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 is a very strong offering.
Chit Chit.
It's my favorite, personally. Although We Could Try Ignoring It is pretty... I don't know. There's something about it I like.
We could try ignoring it, sir.
Yeah. I don't know. Do like it. Anyway. Kim.
Yes.
Whatever. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for giving us Chit Chit Chit. You gave it to us years ago, and we've now, we're riding into the sunset. Kim's News and David Katz. We'll talk about Luigi We'll talk about the realities of his case, and we'll talk a lot about those issues around the law that Katz can weigh in on like nobody else, including what's going to happen to the Trump cases. And there was a major breaking development with the Fani Willis situation today. So all of that still to come. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. Fani Willis removed from the Georgia election case against President-elect Trump. Trump has consistently predicted that this would happen. A state appellate court removed the Fulton County DA from Trump's 2020 election interference case today. The decision is likely to severely hinder efforts to try Trump and his co-defendants for allegedly trying to overturn the results of the 2020 presidential election. Now, earlier this year, Trump's lawyers asked for Willis to be disqualified from the case over her relationship with Special Prosecutor Nathan Wade. So it looks like they've been successful in having her removed. Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky wants multi-billionaire Elon Musk to replace House Speaker Mike Johnson as leader of the House. He says nothing would disrupt the swamp more. What? The Speaker of the House, says Paul on a post on X today, need not be a member of Congress.
That's true.
He said nothing is impossible. He said there would be great joy at seeing the collective establishment, the uniparty, lose their ever-loving minds. So I don't know if he was joking about this or if he's serious about it or what.
This is the problem, though, because regardless whether he's joking or he's serious, he is expressing a sort of feeling that Americans have, which is, this will show them, this will own the libs, this will shake up the establishment, whatever it might be. Let's put in Elon Musk, who knows nothing, is richer than anybody else on earth, and is already immensely powerful, and let's make him even more powerful. Let's supercharge it. Why? For any policy reason? No. Is there any policy that Rand Paul cited? No. He said because that will really show the uniparty, the door. It will really break up the uniparty. It'll drive the uniparty crazy. I get it. Washington is an ossified, traditional environment where it's hard to get things done. It's hard to make progress. It's now flooded with money and lobbyists. It's only gotten worse with the Supreme Court that's enabled it all. But the idea somehow that you just put in any old a-hole because he's powerful and rich, like Musk is, because it stirs up Washington and the uniparty, as he calls it, will be driven nuts. That's offensive to me. I mean, this isn't some experiment. There are really people on the other ends of these legislative movements.
They don't
and
care.
You can make a lot of people suffer with your inability to get things done in Washington. It's just,
they probably look at it as control. And we know that Elon Musk, as evidenced by the, last night and the trying to get House Speaker Johnson to do what he wants complete control. So it would make sense that someone like Rand would suggest that, okay, let's just give him control of the whole thing then. Go ahead. Take it all.
California Cruz says this whole thing is a sham, 100%. He ran for president just to avoid all the criminal charges already on the books.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is some truth to that. This idea, the other thing that's a sham is that he's got a mandate. You don't have a mandate. You did well in the Electoral College and you won the popular vote, but you barely won it. I mean, it's not as though, I've got way more than half the country that believes in me and my plan. No, you don't. You don't even have half the country. So the idea somehow that you cruise into Washington, with a mandate, isn't it enough to note what was just noted by our viewer, which is, from California Cruz? You did this to get away from the legal cases that were grinding against you. The criminal charges, you did it to avoid them. I don't know. They're operating as though they have a mandate, and they simply don't. But it doesn't matter. They do have control. So mandate or not, they will be making some radical changes in Washington.
As mentioned earlier by Mark, Luigi Mangione is now in New York in a federal courtroom. He was extradited from Pennsylvania by plane and then helicopter to face charges connected to the murder of United Healthcare CEO Brian Thompson. Federal authorities charged Mangione with murder today, in addition to the New York State murder counts. He's expected to be in New York State court later this afternoon. Congress is looking to avert a government shutdown. Members of Congress announcing Tuesday that a deal had been reached ahead of tomorrow's deadline. But as mentioned, calls from President-elect Trump and Elon Musk to kill the bill now have it in limbo. A number of House Republicans withdrew their support as Trump calls on them to renegotiate the measure. He said anyone who votes for this bill will be primaried. A nationwide strike against Amazon is being launched by the Teamsters Union just 6 days before Christmas. They're doing this to spoil our Christmas. They're striking at Amazon facilities across the country, starting, and the union says it's the largest strike against Amazon in U.S. history. The picket lines are up at the Amazon facilities in New York City, Atlanta, San Francisco, the Chicago area, and 3 locations in Southern California as well. Drones are being temporarily banned by the FAA over parts of New Jersey due to security reasons. Unidentified drone sightings have been rampant over the state in recent weeks, causing concern among many residents. While the federal government says they have found no threat to national security, the FAA's ban on the drones lasts through January 17th. There is a 20-year-old man from Carlsbad, California, detained by authorities on suspicion of plotting a mass shooting in conjunction with a Wisconsin school shooter. The gun violence restraining order claims the man was in contact with the Wisconsin 15-year-old and coordinating an attack at a government building in the Carlsbad area. This restraining order allows police to seize weapons from this man. This gets weirder and weirder. Governor Gavin Newsom is working to help the state respond to the ongoing bird flu issue. The governor declaring a state of emergency yesterday to streamline and expedite financial and other efforts to help deal with the increase in bird flu cases around the state. The move comes following new cases of bird flu in Southern California at a dairy farm being reported. No confirmed person-to-person spread of the virus in California so far, but there have been nearly 36 reported human cases of bird flu in California since the spring. So again, now we have a state of emergency over the bird flu.
That state of emergency, just to interrupt for a second, though, is on some level
financial.
Yeah, right. It's administrative, too. Yeah, they can make things happen fast. Right.
In Oakland, they have a new mayor, at least for the time being. It is Nikki Fortunato Bass has been officially sworn in as the city's new temporary mayor, taking the place of the ousted former mayor Sheng Tao. Bass has been appointed interim mayor because of her former position as the city council president. The city council setting April 15th as the date of a special election to replace Tao and Bass, for that matter. Los Angeles Deputy Mayor Brian Williams off the job over allegations he made a bomb threat against City Hall. Yes, the Los Angeles Deputy Mayor. Mayor Karen Bass's office has announced that Williams has been placed on administrative leave pending an investigation by the LAPD and the FBI. FBI agents this week raided Williams' home after learning he was likely the source of the threat. The threat was made earlier this year and investigated, determined not to involve any immediate danger to lawmakers or to City Hall in general. The FBI is also investigating the death of an alleged unruly passenger on a cruise ship sailing to Los Angeles. The man died last Friday while aboard the Royal Caribbean cruise ship called Navigator of the Seas. The ship was sailing from Ensenada to Los Angeles. There's new video of crew members restraining the man on the floor with towels. It's unclear exactly how long after being restrained he died.
It's crazy. And the whole thing started just an hour into their trip, too. So he must have shown up to the vessel pretty messed up on something. It feels methy and
Right.
More than just alcohol or anything else, I think.
Speaking of travel, today airports are starting to see the Christmas rush. The TSA spokesperson says they predict holiday travel will exceed what was seen during Thanksgiving, which set some records. They say that the top brass will be working with the security lanes along with the rank and file to get travelers on their way really, really quickly. Scientists are turning the San Francisco Bay's famous fog into water. The process of fog harvesting can have far-reaching implications for a state frequently plagued by drought. Researchers from UC Santa Cruz and Cal State Universities, Monterey and San Francisco, said this untapped water resource can make communities more resilient during hot, dry weather. They say significant amounts of water can be collected and stored for future use. So suck it out of the sky. Lastly, Paris Hilton is considering entering politics. We've seen that reality TV stars have great success. So she spoke to The Hill yesterday after she advocated for a bill that supports at-risk children, and it was passed by the House. It's called the Stop Institutional Child Abuse Act, and it was passed yesterday after it unanimously cleared the Senate last week. Paris Hilton said she never felt prouder in her life after that bill's passage, but said there's definitely more to do and that she would be coming back to D.C. And then a reporter asked her if she might run for office someday, and she said, after seeing that my voice really can make a difference, I can maybe see that happening. So,
wow. That's extraordinary.
I'd be willing to bet my lunch that there's alcohol involved.
Maybe.
Senator Paris Hilton? Who knows?
What?
Yeah. I used to, as you know, was the voice of The Simple Life with Paris and Nicole. Yeah.
Hey, which one do you use? Mark Thompson?
Yeah.
Learn these things about you every day that I didn't know.
Yeah, I was the voice of The Simple Life, which you'll remember had Paris and Nicole doing different things. It was Nicole Richie and Paris Hilton. And it was so much fun because that show was, just a fun show and such a hit. It was really great to be the narrator on it,
Did you get to meet them and hang out?
Never met him, no. The whole thing was done in post. No, never met him. Yeah. But look, stranger things. Politics has become such a name recognition carnival of crazy that people with the name recognition, like Paris Hilton, there it is, The Simple Life. Yeah. Might actually be able to ascend us. I mean, you'll have to put some meat on the bones there. I mean, you'll have to come up with some policy. But if she can do that, who knows? I mean, maybe the right situation, she could actually. It's a lot of work, politics. Just even the fundraising. I don't know if she's up for the work. I mean, in The Simple Life, she wasn't up for the work. I can tell you that. It was that basically the whole thing was typically, while Nicole readies the kids' carnival with games and prepares for a lunch, Paris is just beginning to get her day going at 11:30 in the morning. That was essentially all of the narration. So, a lot of fun. Anyway, good luck, Paris.
This report is sponsored by CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. It is so good. They got the holiday blend.
Oh, yeah.
There, and the winter solstice tea.
Mm-hmm. Those are their holiday selections. I'm drinking it right now, of course. No, I'm drinking the holiday blend this morning. The holidays never tasted so good. Yeah. The holiday blend and the winter solstice herbal tea. Such great stuff at Coachella Valley Coffee. Check them out if you haven't yet, and you will be a believer. But definitely use the 10% off code, which is MARK-T at checkout, and enjoy. Should be pretty great, the holiday season, with a little Coachella Valley coffee, or maybe the holiday gift set, as Albert has called up. Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Look at that. What else is in this? I've got the holiday blend, 2 holiday blend Christmas coffees, and it looks like a canister of tea. All right.
Yeah.
That looks good. One thing I'll say about them is they're really fast with the shipping. They're quick on the uptake. They get your order. It's like they've got it in a box and it's coming your way.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, it's true. They are very, very good that way. Look, I think everything about them is pretty terrific. So I hope everybody will jump on board and give them a try anyway. CoachellaValleyCoffee.com. And again, Mark T at checkout for 10% off your order. So
I'm Kim McAllister. This is The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson?
Put that coffee down.
Happy Chanukah.
My bad. I'm sorry. Seriously, what the Why are you yelling?
Can you let him finish, sir?
I love it when you're angry.
right on, everybody. Right on. Glad you could be here. This, I think we're close to sold out. I might have one more seat for the holiday meetup. It is Saturday, 5 o'clock on the West Coast, 8 o'clock on the East Coast. It's a 2-hour virtual meetup. You don't have to have your camera on. It's like a Zoom meeting. You can just check in with us. And I think, as I say, I think I have one more spot. You can sign up at our PayPal. The PayPal links are under all our videos. Just click through and put your credit card in or whatever it is, $50 donation to lock up a spot for the Saturday meetup. And then note after you have made that transaction, meetup on PayPal. There's a little place where you can leave a note. So note meetup with your donation and then drop me an email, mtsmeetup@gmail.com. But please do it soon because, as I say, we just have one more spot there, mtsmeetup@gmail.com. Going to be a lot of fun. Looking forward to Saturday. So I hope everybody will be able to join us. It's, I think we'll ask David Katz if he wants to come through. Did we already ask him, Kim, or not? No?
Yeah, I believe we did ask him. I'm not sure what he said.
Okay.
There's a reason that this place is fun. The Mark Thompson Show.
There's a reason this place is fun. We asked him. We just left the room before he answered. So
we don't know what he said.
Yeah.
Well, I emailed everyone, and I don't.
I see. I see.
It's not fake. That's real.
You didn't hear back from him. Is that what you're saying?
I might have. I'm looking right now.
Happy Chanukah.
I am really amazed that you're not a little more on top of this.
Well,
I might have heard back from him. I don't know. I haven't really checked.
I'm not sure.
All right. I don't know.
We could try ignoring it, sir.
All right. Let's ignore it and move on. Kim is
the Mark Thompson Show.
Kim's on top of it. So we'll figure out what the situation is with Katz, and hopefully he will be along to help us. What's happening in Canada is pretty wild. Just a quick word about this Canadian resignation. I mean, tremendous change all around the world, right? I mean, the martial law in South Korea, the Syrian revolution, and the fall of Assad. And in Canada, they have their own version of this whitewater rafting ride that is politics. So there was a resignation letter from Deputy Prime Minister and Finance Minister Chrystia Freeland before anyone could even catch their breath. She had written what I guess is a really terrific resignation letter. Now, she was a writer, journalist. I remember reading her stuff at The Economist or something, wasn't it, Kim? Or Financial Times.
Financial Times, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so she really knows how to write. And I guess she wrote a pretty, it was interesting because I think it's well written, but it's also Canadian. So it doesn't have like the in-your-face smack talk of an American post or resignation letter, potentially.
I don't know. I think it might. Instead of, you would expect it to be with a writer like her, flowery, maybe using some big words, and it's very, very direct.
What does it say? Can you read us a little bit of it?
It says this: "You tried to demote me, so I quit." She said, "You and I have found ourselves at odds." She says, "I see President-elect Donald Trump's aggressive economic nationalism in the form of tariffs as a grave challenge. You, dear Justin, are into costly political gimmicks." Then she says that they can ill afford those gimmicks. And she says, "You are unserious." She says, what it means to be serious, to act in good faith and humility, to face the threat from Trump, to be a nation strong, smart, and united. And she says, you, pretty boy, are not able to lead this kind of Canada. I am. I'll be running I'll be running for my seat in the next election.
Wow.
And as everyone can read between the lines, I'll be running to lead the party. So
wow.
there you go.
Sayonara, sucker.
Man. It does get a little smack talky at the end. You're right.
It does. And you know, they're known for their polite politics.
Yeah.
So this kind of goes against the grain and she's his, you know, what? I don't want to say second in command, but one of his top lieutenants.
That's exactly right.
So,
yeah.
That was very inappropriate.
And it's just truly a situation in which they have a little political instability north of the border as well. And she's not wrong. It's at a time when there's sort of like a high-stakes game being played by Trump with the Canadians and the Mexicans. Sort of truly crazy. But, all right. That's what's happening with our friends to the north and with a historic, apparently, resignation letter for both its politeness and its frankness, all wrapped up into one. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
This is one of the top legal analysts across the English-speaking world. You've heard him on radio in London. You've heard him and seen him across the U.S. on Fox News Channel, on News Nation, and you've heard him in Australia and New Zealand. I mean, I'm telling you, this is the last word in political analysis. You'll get it right now from the great David Katz. David, you were a former federal prosecutor. Now you work the defense side of things, and I want to start with Luigi. Luigi was just brought to New York. There were several people with questions for you, one of which was, why is there a federal part of this at all since it happened on a Manhattan street? Can you speak to just sort of the jurisdictional aspects of this, the law being charged federally or being charged in the state of New York? And then I have a couple other questions as well.
Well, I'll try to answer each of them succinctly, Mark. The reason that there's federal jurisdiction is that because he crossed state lines with the intent and then did indeed commit various enumerated federal crimes. So they could go after a lot of people for crossing state lines to do things. Sometimes, like with kidnapping, if you actually kidnap somebody within a state and then you either release them or you kill them within the state, there might actually not be federal jurisdiction because as heinous as that crime is, it doesn't cross state lines. And then there are ways to try to say, well, you bought the gun to do it, or you lured the person from state A to state B. But if you do something entirely within the state, generally there's not going to be a federal jurisdiction. But here, you know, we all know from the narrative that, you know, he came from Atlanta, he laid in wait allegedly in New York City. Then he had a New Jersey fake driver's license. He got his ghost gun. We don't know in New York or somewhere else. Then he immediately fled the state and he went to Pennsylvania. So there'd be a basis for federal jurisdiction. And they're saying that one reason to try to pursue it is to ask for the death penalty. You know, we still have the death penalty. It's not been held unconstitutional by the U.S. Supreme Court. There's a lot of rules how it has to be tried and how it has to be applied. But if done all correctly, the death penalty is still legal under federal law. And it might be that they will leave this in Trump's and Bondi's, bailiwick and see if they really want to pursue the death penalty case. And if they do, there'll be criticism of that. And of course, if they don't, as heinous as this crime was, there'll be criticism of that. I suspect there'll be a new lawyer. I've heard some good things about the experience of the former DA who's handling his defense in New York City. But I'd imagine if the case went to federal court, there'd be some very experienced federal criminal defense attorney like myself, but it won't be me. This case just doesn't, I'm very busy and this case doesn't grab me for a lot of reasons. And a private attorney still has all the discretion in the world, whether he or she takes a case or not. Not so for a public defender, but for a private attorney. But I think he's going to end up being prosecuted in federal court. And I think they're going to ask for the death penalty unless Trump and Bondi say, no, we won't. It doesn't have to be decided right now whether the case is going to get the death penalty or not. But there's been reliable sources that say it's been presented and returned by a grand jury in federal court as a murder case.
Why, David, you explained so well why it was second-degree murder for a while. And maybe you can review that for us again. But now it's first-degree murder. They've upped the charges, and you were explaining, as I recall, sort of the threshold and the laws in New York and how they're sort of odd, because you'd think if you lie in wait for someone, you kill them in cold blood on the street, that would be a first-degree murder. But you explained last time that no, just because of the way the law is laid out. Could you review that and tell us why it's now first-degree?
Two things are very surprising about New York State criminal law, and the lay public rightly misunderstands it. And I was a district attorney for the summer in Brooklyn, New York, so I can tell you authoritatively these things. Number one, the trial court is called the Supreme Court. That is no end of confusion. It was supreme over the municipal courts and other courts. But the trial court that we're used to is the Supreme Court. And so Donald Trump got tried and found guilty in New York Supreme Court. And so would this fellow if things proceed in New York's trial court. The highest court in the state is called the State Court of Appeals. And the second thing that's confusing about New York for lay people all the time is, why are these heinous crimes not getting charged as first-degree murder? And for first-degree murder, you have to have one of two things. It goes with the victim. And so if the victim is a police officer or a correctional officer or the witness in a case, like some bad mafia movie, that, because of the victim, can be first-degree murder. And the second type of first-degree murder in state court in New York is if it's done with a certain intent, and one of those intents is terrorism. So that's what boosted this up, and the only reason this can get boosted up to first-degree murder. And it seems to me like, again, that DA in New York just seems to be overstepping. I mean, I agree with what he did with Trump all down the line. People say that if his name hadn't been Trump, just like they say if his name hadn't been Hunter Biden, there wouldn't have been such a prosecution. But certainly by all the rules and the facts, that was a righteous prosecution in New York. The one of the subway killer, the one who got acquitted entirely, I think he did overreach a little bit with the manslaughter charge. I have no problem with him going to trial on the lesser charge against the vigilante on the subway, the tall white Marine. But I have no problem with the second charge, and that's what jurors do. Jurors find people guilty or not guilty. They have to find beyond a reasonable doubt, and they found that there was some reasonable doubt whether that subway vigilante Penny should have been convicted. With this fellow, I do think they've overreached. I don't think this was done, manifesto or no manifesto, to instill terror. It was not, I know terrorism when I see it, like the famous Supreme Court justice said, and this wasn't terrorism. This was somebody who really wanted to kill somebody, which is probably true of an awful lot of murders, and they really have some tremendous grudge and hatred toward the victim, whether you or I would think it makes any sense or not, but they have that tremendous hatred, and they kill their victim, and it's not terrorism. So it seems to me that right off the bat, we'd have an issue in state court that this is not first-degree murder, it's not terrorism, and then just the right, the pro-Trumpers have nothing else better to do than to attack that guy morning, noon, and night, and they'll say, oh, there he went overreaching again. So the second-degree murder, righteous. The long prison sentence that's entailed, righteous. But I think terrorism, I don't think that's going to be, that's either going to be dismissed. People say, last thing, Mark, maybe it's a compromise. The idea is you go to the jury, and the jury says, well, I don't see the first degree. I don't see it was really done for the purpose of terrorism, but I do see second degree murder. So it makes them easy, right? It makes it easy for them to compromise on something and return the second degree murder conviction and have him go off to prison for a very long time.
If you were defending it, would that be one of the things that you would go after, the first degree charge being not applicable in this case?
Yeah, I would try to get that dismissed before it ever went to the jury, so that if the jury compromises between something, it would be between second-degree murder and manslaughter. And I would try to put on a manslaughter defense, which I think is going to come back to whatever medications he was on, and that they had these side effects and they were untreated side effects, and try to show that he was sort of temporarily insane, or he had temporarily diminished capacity. People always say, oh my God, who wants to beat a case on insanity? Look at the fellow who shot Reagan, right? And, Reagan didn't die, so that would have been attempted murder. You could have gotten only 15 years in prison, the max, for the attempted murder of Reagan. That guy ended up spending more than 15 years in St. Elizabeth's mental hospital, very much confined. But, you take these cases as you see them. So I think that the defense right now for him would be to try to dismiss the first-degree murder because it's not terrorism, and to try to make a mental defense, if for no other reason than to try to knock it down to some kind of manslaughter.
His lawyer is a former guest on this show. And one of the things she said prior to being attached to this case, and her client being Luigi, she made this comments on one of the panels that she was offering a legal opinion on. She said, I think his best defense probably is associated with insanity or mental state. And so very much what you've just articulated is sort of what she's likely thinking. That's about the only wiggle room here, isn't it, David Katz, with the overwhelming mountain of evidence against this guy?
The only thing I can think of is maybe he has some co-conspirator and he'd be willing to tell on his co-conspirator. That would be certainly worth something. It turns out that the shooter in Wisconsin, in this school there, that she supposedly has a co-conspirator who was just picked up by the FBI. If you imagine that she's still alive and she informed on that person, she would get a sentence reduction. So, but that's the only thing I can imagine, that somehow he's in some cell, he's in some conspiracy, and they break him and he tells on the other people in the cell. And let's face it, if that were true and it could be proven, he would be entitled to a sentence reduction if he was just acting for them. He was the one with enough, temerity. I mean, to me, this whole thing is outrageous. I know I'm supposed to, not be a former prosecutor and comment on it right down the line. But I've said this before, there are so many ways that are urgent to deal with the lack of coverage and to deal with the enormously high price of healthcare and how people don't get it. If people would put all the energy into changing the law, into doing something about it, this obviously is not the way, and in fact turns people off to the very issue that he's trying to turn. It's a boomerang. It's self-destructive, among other things that are awful about what he's alleged to have done.
Well, moving on from Luigi, let me get to
Mark. Can I ask you one thing?
Please, of course.
When did you have his lawyer on, and what were the circumstances that you invited her? Do you remember?
Kim, I was away, and Kim invited her because we liked her. It was a podcast that she did, Kim, as I recall, right?
Yeah, she was on I think it's a Midas Touch legal show, and she was talking about Trump and all the Trump cases, and it was a non-David Katz day. So I called upon her, and she was gracious enough to come on the show. And now it turns out she's Luigi's lawyer. Agnifilo is her name.
Yeah, she was really good. Yeah. She was really good on our show, almost to the Katz standard, almost. Not quite, but almost.
What a great get. I think I was in Europe. I try to always be here. I move things around, Mark, to be honest.
Thank you.
If a judge will allow me. So I have Thursday at noon for you. So the one Thursday I'm not here. It sounds like Kim got a great get.
Yeah, it was a good pull for sure, and we'll have to wait until this trial is over to try to get back in touch with her. But
Mark, I have to tell you one other thing too, if you don't mind. So
please.
When I saw that the Cal Bears were playing at SoFi, one of my first thoughts was to invite you, and you were busy. And I'm not thinking about that anymore. I'm thinking about how incredibly bad the traffic is on the 405 trying to get to SoFi. And who pops on my radio, Mark?
Yeah,
you doing that show. And I'm not just saying this because I'm on your show. You were terrific, and you were talking about the 2035 mandate for no new gas powered cars being sold in California. Old cars could still be sold, but at least if EPA is allowed to keep going this direction, that new cars that are gas powered couldn't be sold after 2035. And you opining that with Trump in there, he may suspend that or find a way to have EPA suspend that. So that may not be real, but it was just a great report. And when you're moving at 4 miles an hour, which I was down the 405, I listened to the whole thing. Even the 7-minute commercials. It reminded me of the station that shall not be named. You have to kind of buck up to get through that commercial.
Man, they make a KGO look like commercial free. I mean, we came from a station, KGO, that had heavy commercial load, but man, KFI has a sick commercial load. It's you can celebrate birthdays waiting for the commercials sweep to be over. But I appreciate you listening. Thank you. Yeah, I'm on all week
and
there.
Kim, he made you famous. I'm sorry, infamous.
Yeah, Kim got a lot of.
I know.
Kim got airtime.
Have you heard about it? Have you heard?
Yeah, I heard it all about it.
In the time that he could have said, we're going to have David Katz, eminent legal commentator, on the show tomorrow. In the time he could have said that, you took a beating, Kim, but all in fun.
Yes, indeed.
Sunny.
Sunny. Sunny. It's right. Sunny is the name of the astronaut. So tell me about what's happening with Fani Willis. It sounds like she's going to be removed from this case. The Georgia District Attorney now disqualified from prosecuting President-elect Trump. The appellate court removing her. She is, as I say, the Fulton County DA. And I'm wondering if this election interference case now has run aground in yet another way. Sort this out for us, will you?
Well, one thing that frustrated me in the run-up to the election in November was hearing a lot of commentary that this, really could be the end of democracy. The democratic institutions that we so prize in this country, all of us that are really part of our values and part of our fabric, were so at risk. And it was such an existential moment. And then I would see things like Fani Willis committing the errors that she did, doing the selfish things that she did, pursuing this case that I thought she shouldn't be pursuing. And it's like, I buy it. I understand the existential threat that we're facing. And now you look at people like RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, this fellow over at Defense who's completely unqualified,
Pete
as well as other things.
Yeah.
And you think to yourself, wow, we're really onto something. This was one of the most important elections in our lifetime. And I just get frustrated with people like Fani Willis who didn't treat it like that, understanding what was coming, make sure that prosecution was as clean and as untainted as it could be. And
can you just expand on that a little bit? Remind me what she did that seemed to suggest that she wasn't taking it seriously enough.
Well, she was taking it seriously her own way. She got reelected in a landslide. That's one of those. It sure seemed to work out for her. But my point is that case did not help in the Harris-Trump election, and the way that it looked and the way that it gave this bad odor, and not because Kamala Harris did anything wrong, but these things are going to get exploited, and you have to be smart enough to figure out how they're going to be exploited. And she did a lot of things that ended up being exploited. The first thing that got me irked with her was that she went after this racketeering thing. If she had a good charge against Trump and a couple of the others, bring your charge. Charge them with a conspiracy, charge them with the substantive offenses. But this racketeering thing seemed like a way to drag many, many people in there, to make some of them endure a 5-month trial where the evidence would be very little about them, but they'd have to hire a lawyer and sit there for 5 months. And it was, in my opinion, to try to break them and to get them to say whatever she wanted about whoever she wanted, who was, of course, going to be Trump and some of the other people. In other words, if you go after Trump and those others, go after them fairly. But to go after them unfairly just played into his narrative, I thought. The second thing was that she demanded that he go down there personally and appear in court. He could have been video arraigned. He could have been something else. Instead, she made him go down there. She made a big deal. Well, we make all of these poor skells, all these poor defendants go show up at the local jail. So he's got to go show up at the local jail. Well, the local jail was a hellhole that, they could then report that the Democrats who have absolute control of Fulton County hadn't done anything about this hellhole that, people are thrown into. So then he went down there and he played that all to his advantage, because he showed up with a big plane and with a huge line of limousines. And it didn't turn out at all, the visual, the way that she hoped it would. Then we get into the next thing, which is that she has this special prosecutor that the right wing called the $700,000 man, because he billed the taxpayers for $700,000 to be the special prosecutor on the case. And it didn't seem like he brought a lot of experience or anything really special to the case. Now, in fairness to her, she tried to get a very eminent lawyer down there to take the case. And the really eminent lawyer, who would have been a perfect special prosecutor, didn't want to take it. Why? Because he was scared of being on 80 million, negative tweets from Trump. And he was scared of that whole mob that, Trump incites, either at the Capitol or incites in other ways. So, I get it. There was a lot of stuff going on, but still, if that distinguished attorney wouldn't take it as special prosecutor, go find another one. The one that she did find was an inexperienced one who was her boyfriend. Now, she's denied that he was her boyfriend, but the reality was a lot of it doesn't really add up. And for a prosecutor, to be saying things that don't add up and don't make any sense, people think, maybe her case against Trump doesn't make any sense. So she let that happen. Then the trial court heard this whole conflict of interest thing and threw him, the special prosecutor, off the case. So that was it. The money dried up. He didn't make any more money after the $700,000 that caught people's attention. But the trial judge allowed her to stay on, saying that while she'd made a lot of mistakes and blunders and done things that were poor judgment, she could stay on the case. Then it went up to the appeals court. Meanwhile, the election happened down there. She won by a huge margin down there. So she got reelected, and now she's been thrown off the case. So what's going to happen now that she's thrown off the case? I think one of two things. They're either going to get a special prosecutor who'll be selected by her office, or maybe it'll be selected by the governor or some other office down there to pursue the case, or it'll just be assigned to somebody within the office, not as a special prosecutor, but one of her top deputies. She'll then be not allowed to have anything to do, probably not even write a performance evaluation of that underling who then takes over the case. Obviously, that second one will not satisfy any of the people who think that this whole case ought to be dropped, that it's, that this is a Trump witch hunt, that it's very unfair as to these dozens of people who are charged in this sprawling, huge racketeering conspiracy that she's dreamed up. And I just think that the best thing would be is if some board appointed some distinguished attorney down there. There's huge firms down there that do internal investigations. If you hired one of the really big law firms down there and they allocated the money so that they could be paid properly, and you have them take this case forward, it may have to all go after Trump's 4-year term. It may end up getting frozen or suspended during that period of time because of his presidential immunity. But I think you could certainly say that his phone call, remember, if he told the Department of Justice how to monkey with that case, that would be something that the U.S. Supreme Court in the presidential immunity case, Mark, said, no, that's verboten, that's off limits. But I think you could present the key evidence, and this case has the key evidence. It has the phone call that Trump makes that he doesn't expect to be recorded, but it ends up being lawfully recorded. There's no doubt it's him. And Trump says, find me 11,000 votes. That's all I need. You guys go find me 11,000 votes. And it from the context, it means concoct me those votes. The vote had been counted, Mark, 3 times. It had been machine counted. It had been hand counted. It had been recounted. Find me in that context. I believe a jury would find, number one, that was an obstruction of justice. And it's not the Department of Justice. It's not even a federal official. He's on the phone with a state official. His argument's going to be, I'm the chief law enforcement officer of the country. I was still in office. I had to make sure that elections were properly conducted all over the country. That would be his argument. I think that argument would fail as a matter of law. And I think it would fail with a jury as a matter of fact. They would see it for what it was, him reaching out of his official duties, him doing something that was ultra virus, that was not within his official duties. It was not an official act. And that, plus the rest of what he did, sending his minions down there into Georgia, when again, the proper count of the Georgia vote was not a federal responsibility. There was no allegation that some federal right. They tried to invent one later on, but I think you have to look at the case if you're the jury at the time. Having said all of that, I think this case is really probably going nowhere, because even my scenario is that it would go somewhere 4 years from now, and the world may look so different in so many places.
Yeah, as you said it, I thought, well, look, Trump will be 82. The world will be, as you say, a much different place. And it just seems as though these legal cases are going to fade. I mean, just as a practical matter, David Katz, it just seems as though these things will really not come to fruition. I wanted to ask you about the New York judge upholding the verdict in the case against President-elect Trump, the felony, the hush money case, Trump was essentially, you correct me if I'm wrong, arguing through lawyers that he had immunity in that situation, right? And the judge said, no, the immunity doesn't really, he wanted them to toss out the case entirely, I think. Isn't that right, in New York?
Well, I'm very impressed with that judge, Juan Merchan. He's like right out of the legal books. I think in 100 years, his name will be remembered as one of the real heroes, along with some of the people like that that fellow who spoke to Trump on the phone and didn't cave into Trump, even though he was a Republican Secretary of State in Georgia. And that fellow in Arizona, who I think they just about destroyed his political career. You see him on TV from time to time saying, I'm the biggest conservative Republican there is, but Trump wanted me to do things that were improper, and so I didn't do them. How refreshing that guy was. And this Judge Merchan, he's just doing it totally by the book. And so the argument goes like this, that even though all of this happened before he was president, so how could presidential immunity possibly apply? That's the first thing. How could presidential immunity possibly apply? This was in the run-up to the 2016 election. This was paying Stormy Daniels allegedly so that she wouldn't tell about their affair, and hurt him in the election because he'd already made the comment, Trump had, grab him by the you-know-what, and that had gotten worldwide publicity. And another thing like that, Trump was just very, very worried that he would not get the swing voters, the suburban women voters that he figured he needed to beat Hillary. So he had a very strong motive to shut her up. He paid her this hush money. He disguised it in these falsified records. And all of that was decided to happen before he became president. It was a run-up to the election. And remember, he doesn't become president until January 20th, 2 months later. But his deal with Michael Cohen, his attorney, his Roy Cohn wannabe, his Michael Cohen was that he would pay him not in one lump sum, but he would pay him a certain thousands of dollars each month and disguise it as a legal fee when it wasn't a legal fee. It was a payoff that was disguised by falsifying these records. Well, he did do those payoffs every month, and many of those months were while he was in the White House. So his argument is it was an official duty because I happened to sit there in the White House and write those later checks. You know, the joke, and I still think it's funny, was that Trump finally paid a bill. And look where it got me. But he finally paid 2/3 of that bill month to month while he was sitting in the Oval Office. That's just common sense that does not make that an official act. If he had paid some goons to beat somebody up before the election, and the goons came in and they got their beat up the private rival, the fact that he paid the goons in the Oval Office, I want to see. Yeah, I know Thomas and Alito will say anything about anything, but I want to see 7 other justices on the U.S. Supreme Court say that writing a check for hush money for an obligation that was before you ever were president, that was an official act while you were president, just writing the checks. And so Judge Merchan said no. That is not covered. And even to the extent any of that was an official act, the rest of the evidence against you was so overwhelming, it's a harmless error, which means no trial, like nothing in life, is perfect. And so what do you do with a trial that has some little imperfection in it? And the answer is you look and see whether that imperfection really would have had an impact on the whole. And the judge was there the entire time. He could assess how the evidence came in. He could assess what likely the jury did with it. And he said, no, there was so much other evidence. You remember Stormy Daniels testified, gave devastating testimony, which was basically believed by the jury. Michael Cohen, they kept saying, oh, they were going to tear him up. They were going to tear him up. I think, if anything, Michael Cohen tore up Trump's lawyers. Interesting note, I think some of those lawyers are now going to be running our Department of Justice. And they were bested. They were bested not only by the DA's office in New York. There's very good attorneys there, but I think bested by Michael Cohen. I think Michael Cohen kind of ran circles around them, and actually his testimony went in very well, despite the cross-examination of the people who are now going to be running our Department of Justice.
Well, fortunately for them, it's no longer a meritocracy in Washington. I mean, admittedly, there was a compromised meritocracy to begin with, but you could at least find the heads of many government agencies with defensible resumes and with a history of experience that was decent. Now it's a carnival of crazy, I think, and utter novices that will be running all of these various departments, some with, literally no experience in the areas in which they are charged with managing.
Mark, can I just address that really, really quickly? We'll move on to the next thing. This idea that, well, they all pick some people who aren't that good. And when Trump says, I'm going to get the best, of course he's not. And he gets all these people who are terrible, who shouldn't be confirmed. But, the Democrats did it too. We had 4 or 5-star general in charge of the Department of Defense who did a terrific job under Biden. We had a Secretary of Treasury who was sort of a financial genius. And when you look at it overall, the economy was in great shape coming out of the coronavirus. I know Trump is now going to bring down the price of eggs and bacon, and he'll be marched down the street like Caesar when the grocery prices go down, which they probably won't. You look at who else was there. I mean, Ali Mayorkas took all of that guff. He was the United States attorney, which he got on his merit in Los Angeles. And just to rest my case, he went to my school, Berkeley. So I'm telling you, Mark, this is la creme de la creme that was in the Biden administration. I mean, it just was. Merrick Garland, for whatever his faults were, was the chief judge of the appellate court. Why doesn't Trump I tell you what, why doesn't Trump make his attorney general whoever's the top Republican on the DC circuit? Right here, as someone who's a Democrat, I will go on your show and other shows and say, that's great. Pick the top appellate judge on the DC circuit to be your attorney general. Do you think Trump's doing anything like that? No, we have Ambassador Herschel Walker.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I mean, it's extraordinary.
That's Mr. Ambassador to you, bro. That's Mr. Ambassador.
A werewolf can kill a vampire. Did you know that?
All right. So the question then pivots to another area. The state of Kentucky is leading a multi-state coalition in support of this is a Louisiana law related to the Ten Commandments and the display of the Ten Commandments in public school classrooms. So again, 17 other states besides Kentucky that are joining this move. Louisiana's legislature passed this bill requiring all public K-12 schools and state-funded universities to display the Ten Commandments in classrooms. The bill was signed into law by the governor, Jeff Landry. That was in June. And a federal district court judge blocked that law from taking effect. That happened just last month. Now, the Ten Commandments, while historically significant and spiritually significant to many, we always thought that they had a position outside of public classrooms and publicly funded universities. What is the constitutional position that one can take fairly about whether or not this Ten Commandments law could pass? That is to say, whether the Ten Commandments could then be posted. It's not an optional thing. They would have to be posted in all classrooms and public universities in these states.
Well, some of my really good friends send their kids to Catholic schools for various reasons, and they're very impressed with the education that they get. And of course, they're more reasonable than most private schools. They're, of course, more than if you go to the public school because you have to pay for Catholic school. And, they display at these religious schools and many private schools whatever they want to display, including the Ten Commandments. And you can put the Ten Commandments, not hard to get one now with the internet. You can put them up in really big font at home and you can talk to your kids about them. So to some extent, you think, is this really real? And one of the ways that the rubber hits the road is, of course, the kid who's maybe a Muslim or a Hindu, and it just feels uncomfortable that the Ten Commandments are up in the public classroom. And so that's what the fight's about, because we have separation of church and state. And, if you go to some of these people who think, wow, it's so great, Kentucky ought to have that up, you think, okay, so what if there were the 5 precepts of the Quran? I mean, if it really doesn't make any difference, why not have a classroom, public classroom all over the country? And that's what they'd have. They have the 5 precepts of the Quran. I guarantee you the same people who are screaming, many of them for this, would be screaming even louder against this. Again, what I come back to, it is the separation between church and state, and not everyone's a Christian, and not everybody should be, inculcated with the Ten Commandments sitting up in the classroom. The argument is that this has gone on for a long time and it's historical. So it's like our money says, in God we trust. Well, our money has said, in God we trust for a long time. And the argument to take in God we trust off the money is that, well, come on, you're taking it way too far, separation of church and state. It's the money, it's historical. So as I understand it, that's the whole argument. The argument is that this is not really a religious thing, but the Ten Commandments have been around so long, they're so embedded in our historical traditions that just on the basis of history, it should be allowed. I mean, there's a precedent from 1980 which says it shouldn't be allowed. So I guess this is another one where the Supreme Court is going to suddenly say, oh, those precedents, oh, the ones that we told Congress and Susan Collins that we believed in precedents. No, just kidding. Just trying to get on the U.S. Supreme Court. We don't really believe in a lot of those precedents, especially if we don't like them. And, then you have the fact that there is an overwhelming number of Catholics on the U.S. Supreme Court. I only point that out because the court used to be very Protestant, and then there was the so-called Jewish seat, which when RBG was there, and I think Kagan, there were 2 Jewish seats, and I think Breyer was Jewish. So there might have been as many as 3 Jewish seats. I think the U.S. Supreme Court at one point had 3 Jewish members and 6 Catholic members. But now with this number, I think it's 7 Catholic members. I just think that the Supreme Court shouldn't go there. They decided in 1980 that the 10 Commandments being required to be in the court, in the classroom in these states, that was against precedent. And I don't think they should turn around and say, we're overruling that precedent because there's such an historical tradition. And then you get into the thing that the historians, all get involved like they did with the Second Amendment cases. Is that really true? I went to public school. They didn't have the 10 Commandments up in public school in New York City in the 50s. I don't know how historical it was.
No, I mean, but that is, as you said, the entire argument, that it's a historical one. And that because they know that they're going to lose the religious one. So they keep the religious part out and they go, no, this is not religious, it's historical. Right. Okay. That's the situation there. But I'm sorry, I might have missed in all of it, but will you handicap it for me? Will you Katzadamus it for me? What do you think is going to happen on this?
I think they're going to turn it down. I think there's really not I think they're going to lose in those states. So they're going to stand by their precedent from 1980.
Okay.
And so I don't think that's, but in God we trust on your money. No one will take your money anymore. That part is
that's true.
Valid for all debts, that part. But in God we trust is going to stay on the fact of your cash that nobody wants to take much anymore. When I went to SoFi, you better not have cash there. Nobody will take cash for anything, not for a beer.
Is that right? It's that's wild. That's wild. It's a religious document, no place in public schools, says Vicky. I mean, that's certainly, again, I think they're on some level, they're aware of that, and that's why they're playing the historical side of it. Well, we got to go, but I kind of had a couple other quick questions for you.
For it, Mark. We'll do the lightning round.
We'll do a lightning round. And Kim, you can jump in on this too, because Kim, that was 10 Commandments law was one of the things that really rankled Kim, and I'm glad we got to it. The abortion issue of being tested in Texas, the whole situation there with their AG, who's corrupt, isn't he? Ken Paxton is corrupt AG in Texas. But there is, again, just last week, their Attorney General, Ken Paxton, filed a lawsuit against a doctor in New York for mailing those abortion pills into the state of Texas. This Margaret Daly Carpenter, she's a doctor, part of a group called the Abortion Coalition for Telemedicine, represents doctors who mail abortion medications, in this case it's mifepristone and misoprostol, to states where the procedure is banned. So they suggest that they rely on the protections afforded by the SHIELD laws to do this, and those SHIELD laws are on the books in 23 states and the District of Columbia to provide protection to providers and other possible defendants from out-of-state legal consequences. So, back to Texas now. Texas is going to sue and is the first to challenge the SHIELD laws to which I've just referred. And it's likely to raise unprecedented legal questions in the new year around just this, the mailing of these materials to various states where abortion is just not provided and there's no even availability of the pharmaceutical abortion pills. Can you speak to this lawsuit and where we are sort of in uncharted territory?
Well, this is questions that were raised, of course, after Dobbs came along and the U.S. Supreme Court 6-3 overruled a 49-year-old precedent of Roe v. Wade. And people said, well, it'll be back in the states and the states can do what they want. Well, one of the things that the states want to do, especially the red states, is fight with the blue states. So there are SHIELD laws in the blue states, the ones that are pro-choice. which basically say you can't mess with our doctors or our professionals because they may give advice into a red state, or they may send these pills, this combination of two pills that is a medically induced abortion, and which is how about 2/3 of women actually get an abortion is with those pills. So there was supposed to be kind of like a Cold War, but it becomes a hot war every now and then. And the Texas AG is making it a hot war by actually charging criminally somebody with breaking the law of Texas. Now, how they're going to get jurisdiction over that person, I would not suggest that that female doctor in New York change planes in Dallas anytime soon.
Right.
But it's like an old civil procedure question. When you start law school, you usually start with civil procedure in a case called Pennoyer v. Neff. And it's like how you get jurisdiction over people. And people used to get served with summonses on airplanes while they were flying over the state where the state wanted to assert jurisdiction. They're going to have all those kinds of questions. I think it's a practical matter. None of those shield states, Mark, is going to extradite anybody or pay any attention to process. They'll probably have some way, because Texas, you know what they'll do to be vindictive. They'll try to put it on your criminal record. You'll have a rap sheet which shows that you were, subject to convict. You're charged with a crime down there. I think they'll have to have some way in the blue states to expunge those like right off the bat, so you don't have a record. But I mean, if this doctor, because she has sent, I think it's a bad search. I think some boyfriend goes over to her house and wants to see what's going on. He looks at her medicine cabinet. He sees that there's a prescription which is filled by this New York doctor. This comes to the attention of the Texas Attorney General. He turns around and is going to prosecute that doctor for sending that drug into Texas where it's illegal. And of course, the New York law shields her from just that sort of prosecution. And so they're going to play tit for tat for a while. You know, there was an issue whether the Congress, especially when it had its composition right now, should have passed a law that Biden would have signed. Maybe they didn't have 60 votes in the Senate when push came to shove. But the idea was to take Roe v. Wade, warts and all. And that's very hard for some people on the left and who are pro-choice to swallow, because when you take Roe v. Wade, warts and all, you have the 300 miles that a young woman has to drive in Texas before there's a place where she can get an abortion. And you have all of the restrictions, these little niggling restrictions that the conservative Supreme Court put on the right to choose. But that law, it seems like, would have passed, and it would have been a national standard below which people like this Texas AG could not go. Now it's the Wild West. It's every state for themselves, and they're going to play this game. And again, people shouldn't change planes in red states. I'm saying, you're one of these people. Look at your itinerary.
Yeah.
Don't change planes in a red state.
Well, on the just to finish up, just on that same kind of note, the Supreme Court is taking up South Carolina's effort to defund Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood, I get it. It's associated with abortion and women's reproductive freedoms, but there's a lot of other stuff that goes on at Planned Parenthood, the cancer screening, and they do physical exams of one sort or another. I mean, it really is, I think Planned Parenthood, more than 90% of what they do has nothing to do with abortions. But anyway, the Supreme Court is now reviewing the effort to disqualify Planned Parenthood from providing non-abortion services to Medicaid patients. And again, the services are those that I mentioned, cancer screenings, birth control, physical exams. The court's going to restrict itself to a single question in this case, apparently. The justices agreed to take up the question of whether the Medicaid Act's any qualified provider provision unambiguously confers a private right upon a Medicaid beneficiary to choose a specific provider. I guess that is a legally way to say you should be able to choose whatever Medicaid beneficiary, whatever the Medicaid beneficiary wants. That is, I'm a beneficiary of Medicaid. I can choose any specific provider. Isn't that generally what it's saying, or maybe I'm confused?
I think it may provide a basis where if you really have this negative view of Planned Parenthood, you can try to boycott them or something like that.
Okay.
I don't think it's going to have a major impact. As you say, Planned Parenthood does so many other things that help women's health that it's got kind of demonized by these people on the far right in the Trump coalition. The problem is that for 95% of people maybe in America, They respect Planned Parenthood. They see that Planned Parenthood does very good things, but it's like the 25th issue for them. The people who have this hatred of Planned Parenthood and think it's all about, encouraging abortions, which is not what they do. But for that tiny group, it's their number one issue or their number two issue. And so they vote on this, they lobby on this, they lobby the Supreme Court on this. And of course, it's very scary with the composition of the U.S. Supreme Court when you have people like Thomas and Alito who don't really seem to get, they're always looking for all these things like somebody doesn't want to perform some kind of procedure because there's somebody on the staff who has a religious objection to it. And of course, all of these places, I shouldn't say all, but most of them have workarounds. If you really have a religious problem with doing some procedure, somebody else can do your shift. You can work it out. They have these people who don't want to work it out. They want to have these high profile cases where they act like, oh, this is the most terrible thing that ever happened to the freedom of religion. And then they get amplified in the right-wing media. And some of them even have cert granted by the U.S. Supreme Court. So let's stay tuned on this one. I thought you were going to ask me about the Supreme Court taking TikTok. Maybe we'll do that next week.
Well, I mean, I'm presuming that, they decided to hear that in a rush, and we can do it next week. Although next week, I think it's the day after Christmas. It's I don't think
I can do it, Mark, if you and Kim can. I can if you guys can.
Real quick, let's do it because I don't think we're going to see you next week. So it's TBD still, but the situation is the Supreme Court moved onto their docket for early January the question of whether TikTok must be sold. ByteDance has to sell TikTok to continue in America. Can you speak to this? The Supreme Court is going to rule on this, so they could force the sale to an American owner.
This U.S. Supreme Court is an amazing animal. It was very slothful when Trump's the challenge is to get Trump's tax returns. Do you remember? Nothing seemed to go fast. It seemed to need to go there twice, 2 years. This thing over January 6th, Mark, there was no way in the world it could be decided in a month. This animal, the U.S. Supreme Court, just somehow couldn't. All of a sudden, wait a second, whether TikTok has to have a Chinese owner or not, this matter has to be decided in the next 3 or 4 weeks. Apparently, it's going to be very expedited in the way that the Trump cases worked. And this U.S. Supreme Court, I think, is going to say that it is within the national security power of the Congress to say that such a widely disseminated service like that has to have an American owner. They're going to say that Congress has made that determination and that the only reason would be if it's unconstitutional. And I don't think that a Chinese owner has a constitutional right to have an enormous platform like that that goes to over 100 million U.S. listeners, U.S. participants. But
David, a foreigner does have full First Amendment protections, as do people who are citizens of the U.S. Isn't that the case? In other words, just the fact that you're a foreigner doesn't mean you don't get the protections of the First Amendment. You get the same protections that a naturalized citizens of the U.S. get, don't you?
I think they can speak on media, they can disseminate messages on media, but whether they can own that media, which has the capacity to give the Chinese government a lot of information about Americans, it just seems to me that it has some discernible way of, I just think it's distinguished from the fact that the Chinese could pay $1 billion and buy ads. That would be a different thing if you stop the Chinese government from buying, let's say, ads, you stop the Chinese company from buying ads. I think the fact that they own that and the way that it has such penetration into the market and such information back from who has every, I'm not an expert on it, but there are things that it can do, Mark, that give the Chinese tremendous intelligence. And so since the Congress has decided that, now 2 things could go wrong. Of course, some American owner, like Trump's biggest friends, could turn around and buy it. And it could be
Jared Kushner's already indicated he wants to buy it. He and a consortium of investors. Yeah.
And it could be some sweetheart deal. Having Kushner and some of his ilk and know that much about Americans, but still it's a different thing from having a foreign power know that much about Americans as they can glean from TikTok. So my Katzadamus is that if the matter is just standing like that the Chinese haven't sold it to anybody, Kushner hasn't bought it, by the time the U.S. Supreme Court decides, it will say no, it must divest to a American owner. And people have pointed out that during that period of time, you'll still have service. But since they won't have the updates and you can't buy it at the store and stuff like that, your service will get worse and worse. And eventually you won't have TikTok. There'll be someone who's like TikTok that will basically take their market share. So the Chinese, I think, will have a very strong inducement to get the money that they can and to go sell it to some American group. That's what I think. That's my Katsadamas on it.
Finally, and this will just do very quickly, but I don't want to let the week and this conversation with you slip by without at least visiting the fact that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are threatening media outlets, and one major media outlet, ABC News, tapped out at the beginning of this week with a $16 million settlement with Donald Trump on a defamation suit that they would probably have won. That is to say, ABC likely would have prevailed. But it's possible that there were emails exchanged that could have done some reputational damage to ABC or whatever. And also it's possible they just didn't want to end up on adversarial footing with the incoming administration. It's a big company, Disney, right? It's not just ABC News. It's a bunch of other stuff. So there is that. But then Trump turns to a almost defenseless foe in the Des Moines Register. They have almost no money now, right? It's not the big, powerful paper that they were decades ago. And so it looks as though, and he's threatened others. He's threatened MSNBC, and he's threatened hosts on MSNBC, Rachel Maddow, and they of course, talk about Liz Cheney all the time. Speak, if you would, now to this new kind of legalized weapon that Donald Trump seems to be wielding and targeting so many people who are perceived as his adversaries.
Well, you know, Trump went after Hillary Clinton in a civil suit and had to pay $1 million in her legal bills and recovered from Hillary Clinton $0. So he's going to end up having sanctions imposed on him. I think his lawyers are going to make sure that their malpractice insurance is paid up in full, because the lawyers who bring these cases, if they haven't made a full factual and legal investigation of the claims that they're making on behalf of Trump, the lawyers could not only be subject to sanctions, but to professional discipline. And we've seen so many of Trump's lawyers get in state bar disciplinary trouble, including this professor that he had out here in California. So that's one thing. The second thing is regarding ABC News. I think that just from a pure point of view of defending themselves, I think ABC wouldn't have paid the $16 million to get on his good side. I think the way you stay on Trump's good side is you show that you're ready for the fight. As Johnston always says, he's feral. And be feral back and realize that you don't want him to lay a $16 million blow on your jaw if you're going to be dealing with him for the next 4 years. So ABC News didn't want that. My suspicion is that the discovery would have been bad. My suspicion is that someone told Stephanopoulos, don't say rape. Whatever you do, it's not rape. Maybe you can justify that by the ruling that the federal judge made, defining how it is. It's hard to define rape. It's not the common sense definition of rape. But I think he was told, don't say rape, and he said rape anyway. I don't know whether it was to be puckish or to be provocative. But let's face it, Mark, if you have discovery that says that the host was told not to say those words, and then I don't think that they did the kind of retraction that I think most media lawyers would have told ABC and Stephanopoulos, do a faster, better retraction right after you say that remark. So I think that, you know, you look at Fox. Fox paid almost $800 million. Fox didn't say, you know what, we're going to fight this all the way to the bitter end, to the jury verdict and on appeal. Fox paid $800 million in a defamation suit. So I don't think it's that surprising that ABC News paid the $16 million. And I think that's all it is, that the case wouldn't have gone that. Can I just talk to Des Moines real quick?
Yeah, I just want to say one thing about that, because it's a great parallel you make. The Fox News and ABC, very much the same flavor, meaning a lot of the stuff that was coming out in the ramp up to the Fox case was reputationally damaging, right? It had a bunch of text messages from their hosts calling Trump a clown, calling Trump a scourge on this country, et cetera. And so the fact that they kind of knew that they were putting a lie out there was coming out in all sorts of different communications that were part of the discovery process. And what you just pointed out is there might have been similar communications in the ABC case that could have also been reputationally harmful. I just wanted to make that case. It's a really great parallel. Go ahead.
Supposedly, Stephanopoulos makes $20 million a year, and his contract has been renewed. And, you know, I mean, it's Disney, it's everything else. And so I think that they took the chance, just like Fox took the chance, that this thing would have gone bad and the jury would have awarded quite a bit more than $15 million. Just like Fox thought that with all the shenanigans that were being shown in the discovery and everything else, the comments I think that Tucker Carlson made, that other people made who worked at Fox at the time, they'd get hit for more than $1 billion. They thought 800 million was a good deal given the dynamics of it. And I think that's what ABC thought. I think that's what the ABC thinks about. The Des Moines newspaper, there are all of these law firms that claim that they do pro bono work. And how important it is to them to do pro bono work. And they tell their, recruits out of these top law schools, not that they work for the cigarette manufacturers, not how much work they do for the polluters. They tell them about their pro bono work and all this great pro bono work they do to help society. Well, law firms, get cracking. This Des Moines a newspaper and these other people, this pollster, they need your pro bono services. If you want to tell the world that you do pro bono, that you care about society, that you're not running a law firm just to rake in a huge amount of money, go defend these people pro bono. What's interesting about it, Mark, last thing is it's not a normal defamation suit. And I used to do a lot of these telemarketing prosecutions. And what you want to do around the country is have this private right of action so that the person who's defrauded or cheated can go and sue some company that's defrauding or cheating them. And that is this consumer protection law. Now, it protects certain people. It protects lawyers. It protects other people. In Iowa, it doesn't protect newspapers. So Trump has his free shot. Trump, citizen, with his private right of action under this consumer protection law, he's going to complain about this newspaper, which is not protected by the statute from being sued, that the consumers were deceived. And if he wins, he gets like treble damages. And if he loses, he's not subjected to the normal sanctions that he would have to pay. If it's a frivolous lawsuit so found by a judge, that's one thing. But it's not like the normal, and it doesn't have that standard, that New York Times standard, because it's not a defamation suit. So he is in his Machiavellian, this is a super litigator. This is what he does. He litigates. That's what his life has been before being public office, litigating the hell out of people until they decided whether I'm right or wrong. I don't want to litigate with Trump anymore. And Trump showing the other side of it, that apparently he revels in litigating. It's almost like his superpower. He revels in what the average person doesn't want to do, even lawyers, not in their own lives, for God's sake. Right? You stay away from litigation.
The fact that that he would double back for this Des Moines Register for them just publishing a poll. I mean, I don't, as I say, there's no legal leg to stand on. And you said it so well. I hope these guys have their legal malpractice insurance paid up. It defies logic, but I think he's feeling it. You know, David, I think he feels truly as though his power is immutable and he can do what he wants. It's a scary time in U.S. history, I think. I mean, we take these cases and we discuss them here, but, you know, if you look at the constellation of cases, you see a guy who is really beginning to run amok, and he will have other opportunities to run amok when he becomes president.
Well, if Trump doesn't give Liz Cheney a preemptive pardon,
if Biden doesn't give her,
if Biden doesn't give Liz Cheney a preemptive pardon, I think he'll be known for just basically being so weak, there's something you can do when when a candidate runs for office and says, I'm going to attack all of the political enemies that I don't like. And that's a yin that has a yang. The yang is you give a preemptive pardon to the people that that Trump has documented he wants to get. And once he picked Kash Patel, this was easy. And the idea that people won't really like the process, that they'll vote 4 years from now that they don't like the process, that he gave a preemptive pardon. I think it's the price of gas, bacon, and eggs. That seems to be what resonates with the public. So I wouldn't worry about process votes against him in 4 years because he gave preemptive pardons. And I think he should give them. I think he should give one to that judge in New York. I think that he's in the. And as I say, if people don't want to accept it, they cannot accept it. They can litigate it. But
and there could be a blanket pardon, right, David? I mean, because there's been no charge against these people you're talking about.
That's what Nixon got from Ford. It wasn't litigated in the courts, and yes, it may be litigated. But if I were Liz Cheney and I don't have Trump's money, I don't think she's been basically a career civil servant. I think she was in private practice for a while. But before he makes her spend $1 million, on defending herself and winning. That's winning. They never bring any charges, and you spend $1 million, and you have nothing but this hassle, depositions, everything for the next year or two. That's winning for Liz Cheney. Liz Cheney ought to have a pardon, a preemptive pardon, everything that she's done up to the time of the pardon, which would be the entire J6 committee. I think some other members of the J6 committee should have one too. Senator Adam Schiff says he doesn't want one. I think that Biden should just make his announcement, give it to all the people who should have one in this situation, and they can litigate it later. But if I were Liz Cheney, would I rather have the pardon and have to fight? They're like legal hyenas. Would you want to fight with these legal hyenas, including this House? I mean, the House. And this is just how authoritarian countries do it. This is like how Putin would do it. Trump didn't do this. The House did an independent investigation and decided that the FBI should go after Cheney. And then the new FBI director, oh my goodness, he took this report, and acting on the report, he opened a huge investigation on Liz Cheney. Donald Trump, what did I have to do with it? And it's all with Trump behind it, you know that. And It's all this charade that they play. And anybody who falls for it, I guess they ought to fall for it. But Biden shouldn't fall for it. He should issue his preemptive pardons. By now, it's absolutely clear who he should give them to and why he should give them.
Such good stuff, David. We're out of time. Thank you for being so generous with your time. I look forward to our conversations. We've grown this channel a lot, and this year has been a year of growth, and you're one of the reasons. So I just want to thank you. It's such a pleasure always to spend time with you. Thank you, David Katz.
It's my pleasure, and I heard you really loud. I heard you really loud on the radio.
I'll be on all week. So
Donna Summers, heard you really loud on the radio.
Bye, David. Bye-bye.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Oh, I love my David Katz. Love him. One of the great little elements that we can have every week is our conversation with David Katz. We got to wrap up. Albert and Kim. Kim's got to get over to the after party. And want to thank everybody again for 80,000 subscribers. That is super cool. And I'm hoping for continued success and for you sharing this channel. That is like if there's a part of David Katz's conversation that you feel people should see, put it up on your Facebook page. Put it up in places that others can find it and help grow our footprint. Mo Direct says the title for Elon Musk is Emperor as Person on the Planet. What is this title for Elon Musk? Emperor as Person on the Planet. Yeah. Well, Emperor is pretty much close to what he wants. Tom says, I submitted chit to Merriam-Webster for the new word of 2024. I love that. Yeah, thank you, Tom. Somebody had to do it.
Funny.
David B says, no more chit. Yeah, I don't know. This from iCerial. Trump got the most votes in U.S. history. Are you being sarcastic when you say that? Because that's not true.
That's kind of silly, yeah.
If you're not being sarcastic, then let me just correct you. Trump got the most votes in U.S. history for a sitting president in the 2020 election because he was the incumbent president, and he got the most votes in U.S. history for an incumbent president. But I'll remind you, he lost. Okay, so the other guy got more votes than he did. So, again, iCerial, I don't know if you're being sarcastic or you're being straight up, but Trump, no, just not true. Peter Newton says, since Nudie took speakership, all the GOP has wanted for Christmas is a government shutdown, and they get it. Naughty. Ain't that nice? Peter, that is a great comment. Newton is right here that it was Newt Gingrich who began all of this. Newt Gingrich, in a private meeting, this is in the 80s, created, was it in the 80s? Well, gosh, it all runs together. Was it the 80s or was it the beginning of the 90s? Anyway, Newt Gingrich, Google it, Albert. Will you please tell me?
Google it.
Newt Gingrich led a meeting of GOP legislators. In a private meeting, they made it clear they were going to fight every bit of Democratic legislation. And since then, that division, the division that was sown by Newt Gingrich, has led us to this point where the government may very well shut down. So, hey, Mark, did you get your hot water shower yet? Yes, the hot water has returned, Mo Direct. Thank you very much. It was very touch and go here at the Thompson estate. But things are. But now I have this swamp gas that's coming up from underneath the house, and we don't know what it is. The smell of sewage, which is just lovely. This time of
holidays
year.
at the Thompson estate.
Yes, it mixes with the mistletoe and all the other,
the essence of pine and swamp gas.
Exactly.
Happy Chanukah.
Yeah, so happy Chanukah to everybody. Elon is not serving in any official position right now, let alone being a legal citizen. He's hijacked our country. Doesn't Musk know that with no government funding, his companies don't get paid? Says Tammy. That's a good point. Yes, very well said. Tammy's got the idea. Yeah, I don't know. It's oh well. This is it's a high stakes drama in Washington that we'll watch being played out, but it definitely seems to me like it could have some blowback on those who are behind it, on Trump and on Musk. Maybe not. Maybe it's what they wanted all along, and that's the thing. But I think there could be some blowback. So,
We could try ignoring it, sir.
So the deal is that Kim's doing the after party live now. Tomorrow, we have our Friday Fabulous Florida. Michael Schor, who is the brilliant political analyst, comes by, and looking forward to talking to him and much more. If you're in Los Angeles, yeah, I'll be doing KFI later. And thank you again for 80,000 subscribers.
Happy Chanukah.
And happy Chanukah. Yeah, as Smokey Robinson would say. Shadow!
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
I hope Shadow's having a great holiday season.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
We're out of time, everybody. Thank you, and bye.